Hey, how's it going, guys? So in today's video, we're going to learn how to build a Gemini AI chatbot using Python. Now, before diving into the tutorial, let me just give you a quick demo of the app that we'll be building from scratch. All right, so here we launch the app. Now, when I launch the app, it's going to gives me this welcome message. And right here, you can type quit to exit the app. All right, so let me put that back. And to be able to work with Gemini AI model, we'll be using Google's Generative AI Python library. Now here I can type my questions. So for example, where is Chicago? Then it's going to reply, Chicago is located in the state of Illinois, in the Midwest region of the United States. Then can ask a follow-up question, where should I visit? In Chicago. That's going to give me a list of places that I can visit. And noticing that the output is set to Markdown, which is the default, but I can always change the output format to regular text or even a dictionary or JSON object. It's up to you. Now, because this is going to be an introduction tutorial, I won't be going into too many too advanced features such as how to create a database to archive the conversations and a couple others. My goal here is I'm hoping this tutorial will at least get you started on how to use Gemini AI model to start building different applications. All right, so let me close the terminal. Now, step one is going to create a Python virtual environment that is going to be dedicated to our Python project. Now, open your terminal. And we can create a Python virtual environment by using the command python -m venv followed by the environment name. And I'm naming the environment Gemini Chatbot. Then I'm going to set it into the folder. Now here on my window, I'm going to open the folder here. All right, so once we create the Python virtual environment, we now need to obtain the API key. Now open your browser and navigate to makersuite.google.com/app. And let me see, let me just try that for now. Okay, that worked. Yeah, so you can use the URL makersuite.google.com/app, and that takes you to this page. Now, before we start the tutorial, make sure that you have a Google Cloud Platform account. And if you don't have an account, simply go to console.cloud.google.com and follow the instruction to create an account. And it's pretty easy. Inside the Google AI Studio, want to click on Get API Key. On the top, we have two options. We can either create an API key in a new project, which means that Google AI Studio is going to create the project for us. Or if you're an experienced user and you already have a project created, then you can click on Create API Key in an existing project and select the project that I want to use. Now, since I already have a project, I'm going to click on Create API Key in existing project. And here I'm going to choose the project I want to use. Then click on Create New API Key. And a new set of API key will get generated. Now here I want to create a credential file to store the API key. So right click. And here I'm going to create a text file, but I'm going to name the file to credentials.ini. Inside the ini file, I'm going to create a session called Gemini-API. I'm going to create a variable called API key. Then I'm going to copy the API key. It should be this one here. Assign that to the API key variable. And save the file and close the file. Then we can start with the script development. Right, so let's go back. Now I need to activate the environment. So simply run the activate file from the scripts folder. Now, to use the Gemini AI model in Python, we need to install the Google Generative AI Python SDK. So we need to type pip install Google Generative AI and enter. And once the library is installed, let's create a Python file called app.py. Alright, so I'll launch my VS Code. And let me open the app.py file. Now, from the import statement, let me make that a little bit bigger. Now, from the import statement, we need to import the Generative AI module. So import google.generative AI as Gen AI. Now, to make our code base a little more structured, I'll be creating classes. So the first class I'm going to create is the Gen AI exception class. So this is going to be the base exception class that we're going to use to print the error message. Then I'm going to create my chatbot class. And I just realized something that I should be putting this in a different script because this is going to be a separate module that can be reused for other purposes. Now I'm going to name the file chatbot.py. Now inside the chatbot class, you can define the name of the chatbot. So here I'm creating a constant called chatbot name, and it's going to be the name that I'm going to assign to my chatbot. Next, we're going to create the constructor. So when we initialize the chatbot instance, we need to make sure that we pass the API key. Now inside the constructor, we're going to create an instance of the Gen AI module object, which is this one here. Then we can attach the API key using the config method. Then API key is equals to API key. And just remember that the self.Gen AI object is going to tie to the Gen AI module. Then we're going to attach the model that I want to use using the generative model class by creating a generative model object. And here we need to provide the model ID, Gemini Pro. And I'll name the object as model. Now using the Gen AI module to create a chatbot, we can create a chat session instance to store the conversation log internally. And here I'm going to create a blank conversation object and I'll set the value to none because right now the conversation log is empty. So I'm going to set the value to none. You can also set this to empty list. Now this one's optional. So in case if you want to preload some of the conversation history to give the AI model a little bit more context on what you're trying to do with the chatbot or the purpose of the chatbot. In that case, we can preload some of the information or reference for the chatbot to use before we start the initial conversation with the user. All right, so that's everything we need to do in the constructor. Let's create the start conversation method. So this method is used to initialize a conversation. Now inside the start conversation method, we need to reference the model object. Then we can use the start chat method to create a check session object or instance. And inside the start chat method, like I said before, we can feed a preloaded message or conversation beforehand. And because we're starting a fresh conversation, we are supplying an empty list. Now, if I want to preload a conversation log, right, so here I have a method called preload conversation. And from this method, I give a parameter called conversation history, just in case if your use case is a little bit different from mine. Now, inside the method, we need to check if the conversation history argument is a list. Then we're going to update the conversation history. Now, there are a couple other checks that we can do, but just for demonstration purpose, I'm not going into too much detail. I'm pretty sure you can figure out once you finish the tutorial. All right, so if this condition failed, then I just want to preload my own message, or not my message, my own chat history. Now, to feed the message, so with each message, we need to specify the text and the role. So the role can be either a user or the AI, which is a model. All right, so for example, So I'm going to start from now on, return the output as JSON object because with Google's API, the default is set to Markdown, and I want to change that to JSON object. So here I can return the output as JSON object that can be loaded in Python with the key, and here's the key value text, and I need to provide a reference. Then I can simulate what the output should be from the AI. So I can say, so here I can return the response as a dictionary, and I can simulate this as an output from the AI, which is the model. And to simplify the message construction, I created another method called construct message. And basically, this method takes two parameters, the text and the rule. Then we need to take the arguments and put that into a dictionary object with these two keys. And for parts, we need to make sure that we put the text inside a list bracket. Now, this is another method that I want to create meanwhile. All right, let me take out the candidate count because the default must be one output at a time. Now we can change the configuration setting, such as the top N, top K, and the stop sequence settings. For simplicity, I'm going to simply use temperature as the only configuration setting in this chatbot app. Now, if I'm new to the temperature setting, so temperature controls the creativity of the response, and the value is between 0 and 1. If you want the chatbot to have a relatively creative response, then you can set the value to 0.8, 0.85, 0.9, or even 1.0. And if you want the response to be conservative, then you can set the value to between 0 to 0.4, maybe between that range. And if you want to preload the conversation, so we'll run the oops, let me put that back. So we'll run the preload conversation method before we start the conversation. Now, just in case, if you want to start a new conversation or if you want to reset the current existing session, we can create another method called clear conversation. And to clear the conversation history, we'll simply reference the model object, the start chat, and we'll reset the history to an empty list. And we'll set the history to a blank list. And to make the request code to send the prompt, so here we're going to create a method called send prompt. And it's going to be the most important method to make the chatbot to work. Now, the send prompt method has two parameters, prompt and temperature. So I already covered temperature. It must be between 0 and 1. Otherwise, we're going to raise an exception. Temperature must be between 0 and 1. Now, the other thing I'm going to check is if the prompt is returned empty, which shouldn't be the case, but it does happen sometimes. Then I want to raise another exception, prompt cannot be empty. Otherwise, I can reference the conversation object, that send message. Inside the send message method, I'm going to supply the prompt to the content argument. And to change the model setting, I can reference the generation config object. Then I'll provide my configuration setting. Now, just in case I feel output has multiple parts. And this is one thing I really like about the Generative AI Python SDK is that you can run the resolve method to get all the parts first. Then you can print the response altogether in a single response. Now, if I want to retrieve the conversation log, and this is another thing that I really enjoy using the Generative AI API is that you can directly reference the history. And we can do that by referencing the conversation object. Then we can reference the history attribute, and that will return the conversation history. And from each log, it's going to contain two keys, and it's going to be a dictionary object. And from each log, we can reference the row and the text by referencing parts. And because parts is going to return as a list, and with the check session object, you can only have one message at a time. So we can reference 0 to reference the message, that text to return the output. And we're going to wrap this in a dictionary. Then I'm going to compile all the conversation log into a list. then return the list. Now, this is going to be everything that we need to write to create the chatbot.py module. And here's the chatbot module. So first we need to import the config parser class so we can load the API key. Then from chatbot, I'm going to import the chatbot class. Now here let me insert the main function. Inside the main function, we're going to load the API key. Then we're going to create the chatbot object. Then we're going to start the conversation. Now here I'm going to preload a message when we start a conversation section. Then we need to insert a while loop to keep the conversation running until the input received the keyword quit. Then we're going to print message and terminate the session. Here let me import the system module. And I was doing some testing before, so that should be system.exit. And let me put this right here. Otherwise, we can reference the chatbot object, then we can send the prompt from the user input, then we'll print the response. Now let's test out the app. But first, I need to select the target environment and save the file. Now I'm going to run the script. Oh, I forgot to run the main function. Gemini AI is not available. This should be AI, not API. All right, let me try again. Okay, so here's the welcome message. Now let's say I want to know what are the top languages, actually programming languages for web development. Now remember, from the constructor, we preload the conversation, and from the preload conversation method, we specify that we want the output to return as a JSON object. So we can load the output as a dictionary object. So right here's the key, text, followed by the reply. Then you can ask a follow-up question all about data science. And again, it's going to return as a dictionary. And here's the key text, and here's the reply. Now, if we want to make sure that the reply is back to the regular Markdown syntax, then in that case, you will simply come out this line here. Now, this time, if I ask the same question again, what are the top programming languages for web development? And this time, the reply is going to return as a regular Markdown format that we can read just a little bit easier this time. So this is going to be everything I'm going to cover in this tutorial. And hopefully you guys find this video useful. And you can find the source code from the link in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give this video a like and click on the subscribe button. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.